When disaster strikes, will you be ready?
Good evening, and we begin tonight with the monster hurricane and its deadly impact already.
When all hope is gone, will the government be there for you? If you're looking for ways to take your prepping to the next level, then you've come to the right place. Broadcasting from a secure and well-prepared location, it's time for Prepping 2.0. And now, please welcome authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome, everyone. This is Shelby Gallagher at Prepping 2.0. How's your claps going, folks? It's been fun. It's been a little interesting. It's not been fun. There's been some real serious things happening around our country, but we at Prepping 2.0 are here to help you and advise you and guide you through how to make your so that you thrive through all of this. But before I get any further into that, I want to introduce my co-host on the show and co-host in life, Glenn Tate. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Shelby. How are you?
I'm well. You brought me coffee this morning.
I got you all jacked up on caffeine, which is how to make a show awesome.
Very good.
Well, I wanted to give folks an overview of the show and the guest and the topic. Our guest is Bob Mayne, who is the host of the Handgun World podcast, which is a great podcast. Been on for years. I've been listening since like episode 4 of his, and he's up to over 500. So our topics are going to be twofold, actually threefold. One is Bob's going to talk about how to buy your first gun. Now, a lot of you listening already have about 75 guns, and so this isn't exactly aimed at you, although we have a ton of new preppers. Looking at the download numbers,
people who have one.
Yeah, who have 0 and are looking to get 1. So this is a combination of information for brand new handgun buyers and for those of you out there who have guns and all your friends are calling you right now, like they're calling me and Shelby and Bob probably, and they're saying, hey, I need to get a gun. What do you think? We're going to talk about that topic. The other one is, of course, everyday carry, which is Bob's bailiwick. I mean, that's what he's really, really good at. And then the third part of the show, in the after show, this is cool. I can't believe I didn't think of this earlier, but actually a Patreon thought of it. So kudos to you, Rob. He said, how about predictions from Patreons about what's going to happen in 2020? And I thought that is a spectacular idea. So we have a bunch of 2020 predictions that we're going to go into in the after show. And we're going to ask Bob his predictions for 2020, everything from war with China to who might win the NFC championship, the Seahawks or the Packers. He's a Packers fan, Seahawks fan right here. So we have fun with that. So anyway, that's going to be really cool. So we got a lot packed, no pun intended, Green Bay, into this show. And there we go. But first, Shelby has something pretty amazing to read. This fuels us. This gets us going, and I know it gets Bob going because he gets similar things. So take it away, Shelby.
So first of all, this literally just came across my notifications moments ago, and it's one of those messages from fans that just fuel our fire. It keeps us going. It makes everything that we do worthwhile. So from a gentleman, I'm just going to say his name is Mark. He sent me a message just a few moments ago. A number of years ago, I read 299 Days, Glenn's books, and I began to become a novice prepper. Long story short, by the time this whole pandemic thing kicked off, I had become a low-level prepper. I'm ready for this and have been able to assure my widowed daughter and her children with assurance also. You, capital Y-O-U, made a difference in my life, Glenn. Thank you. May God richly bless you and Shelby and your children.
Yeah, I mean, it says it all. It's why we do this. Neither Shelby nor I nor Bob, and we'll get into that in a moment, ever really thought we would be in the book or podcast world. We stumbled into it and we just shared information that we had and thoughts and things that we had. And it resonated with people and it's helping people. And that's what we love. I mean, we get stuff like this all the time and it never gets old.
No, and it hits us in the heartstrings, and there's a little moistness in my eyes, and it's thank you so much, Mark, and God bless your family, and God bless all of you you're finding yourself kind of pulling together and being thankful for being a prepper for the last few years after being called crazy by so many people. So good on you. So exactly. I'm going to jump to the next topic because we're going to sit here and turn into a pile of mush. But our top 100 list, if you go to our website at prepping2-0.com, and on the lower right-hand corner, you will see top 100 things that disappear in a collapse. We try to highlight one of these every week. We've missed a few, whatever. So we're at number 64 now. we got to find another list or start creating our own probably here in the next few months. I don't know.
Ask Patreons to throw suggestions
Patreon, throw a suggestion up. Anyway, so number 64, this is based on the experience of those who survived the Bosnian collapse, and you can see that list. Number 64, I can see this one, bikes and bike parts. That's a big one because when fuel goes away, all the collapse, scenarios that you've read in books and heard about, when fuel goes away and you need to get somewhere quick, you get your legs going.
Yeah, and of course things like spare parts to the extent you can, bike tires and things like that are
repair
relatively
kits,
pumps, the little needles,
gears,
the little
oils,
all that stuff. I would add possibly, it's going to depend on where you live and what kind of resources you have, possibly mopeds into this.
Like Vespas kind of thing. Yeah,
but they're a little too hip. As I understand, they're a little. You
lose your prepping card when you do that.
If you roll up on into a firefight in a Vespa, and you're on my side, I'm going to shoot you.
Well, here's the thing. I have visions. When I see like World War II.
After you drink a pot of coffee, you have visions.
Stop. I remember. Well, think about how people got around in like German occupied Poland, or if you had a little. There were Vespa-esque sort of little zippy bikes that. No, never mind. You're not going far. Okay. So next on our list of things to talk about.
What's in the merch shack?
Golly.
In the merch shack is it's been an interesting week. A couple days ago, the President of the United States, along with the CDC, so you can't just blame Trump, recommended it might be a good idea to wear a cloth facial covering if you go outside during this whole coronavirus thing. Well, I put a snarky little post on Facebook, and I said, okay, here's me wearing a face mask. I mean, if you've seen my profile pics, I have an I Miss America Hoo-Rag. That's the brand name of our little face mask. And I said, okay, I got that one covered. And the orders have gone through the roof a little bit. So I encourage you, and it's not just wear a mask. Feel free to do that. If you want to order one, go to our website, prepping2-0.com, and click on shop. But it's the message of I Miss America. As we go through this pandemic, it's not just the pandemic, but it's the colossal loss of rights as we go forward, and as left-leaning leaders and governors and mayors start just hand over fist taking away our constitutional rights with little regard for them. I Miss America. We also have our t-shirts and our hoodies and all of that. But the Hoo-Rags, hey, I think it'd be kind of fun, and I'm excited to do it when the next time I make a trip into the grocery stores, to wear that over my face when I'm standing at the checkout line at whatever grocery store, Costco, Walmart, whatever. That will be fun.
Yeah, and we're going to see if anybody out there listening wants to Photoshop a picture of the I Miss America face mask from our website onto a picture of President Trump, and then we will shamelessly tell everybody that the president is suggesting that you wear an I Miss America face mask. And no one will believe it, but actually somebody will believe it, and they'll get on us about it. As I say in the meme about this, I say FDA approved.
Not really.
Yeah, no, yeah. It provides absolutely no protection of any kind.
Well, and it's a cloth facial covering. Check, that box got checked. It's not FDA approved. It's not N95 approved. And of course, there's the couple of little, we call them Horshacks. They stick their arm up on social media. That's not approved. That's not. We know that. Thank you. Got
exactly.
it.
And the funny thing is, and this will just show you how much America has changed in the past, 38 minutes. But we made these face masks, 3 years ago. 3 years ago. And the reason was Antifa.
It was a counter message to Antifa.
It was like, show up at an Antifa gathering and they cover their faces, you cover yours, and it says, I Miss America. And that was a pretty good idea. But now it's like a crazy good idea to have the IMA.
I'm kind of glad we have. We've had this extra stock for a while. And we do them as giveaways, and we sell them. And they just we trickle sell them over the years. We bought a bunch. But now we might need to make another order of those.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to briefly mention the Glenn Tate Show on KHNC, which is a awesome radio station on the Front Range in Colorado, reaches into Denver and Wyoming and Nebraska. It's a great show, and it's on Fridays. The archives are on prepping2-0.com. It's just fun. And then also Pam Radio, yes, indeed, texting with the developer about 3 minutes before we came on the show. We're so close to getting it done. Pam Radio is Prepper Amateur Radio, and it's a set of flashcards. It's an app for your phone. Fun flashcards that are easy. It's free. And it's all about the practical stuff you need to know for ham radio, for preppers. It's not a test preparation. It's nothing like that. PAM-radio.com, PAM-radio.com. Go there, give us your email address, and we will send you the free copy once it's done any doggone day now. So sorry it's been taking a while, you guys. I have a volunteer developer who's an awesome guy, and volunteers are volunteers, and he's doing the very best he can. So there you have it.
Send all of your inquiries about Pam Radio to Glenn.
Not to Shelby, because she's like, I'm so tired of this. This is supposed to be done a while ago. But anyway, I wanted to introduce Bob Mayne, our guest, and I wanted to tell you some stuff about Bob Mayne. One of the things I like about Bob is that he's a lot like me. I guess that's really arrogant of me to say, but here's what I like about Bob. He started off as a regular guy, and he didn't know everything about handguns. I'll let him tell the story about the Walmart parking lot, and that's pretty interesting. He became a student of self-defense and of carrying handguns. Then he became a trainer, and now he's a podcaster. And I highly recommend his podcast, Handgun World, the Handgun World podcast, because it's so practical. He's at over 500 episodes now, which tells you something. I mean, this podcast has staying power. I alluded to this earlier. I started listening to him, and I halfway remember years ago, he said something like, we have like 150 downloads, and he was really happy about that. And now 150 downloads is like Tuesday at 2 a.m. for him, right? And so that's been cool. He's developed as a regular guy. He's not like a SEAL or anything like that. And one of the things I'd like to point out about the Handgun World podcast is that episodes 501 through 505, 501's out now, and then in the next few weeks, 505 will be coming out, 502, 503, 504. They're all on preparedness. His show is mostly about handguns, hence the name, Handgun World Podcast, but he's devoting quite a few episodes to preparedness, and he told me about some of the guests he has, and it's really exciting. So if you like Prepping 2.0, you're going to love the Handgun World Podcast. So please go hit pause now if you're listening on the internet or a Patreon, and go subscribe on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you subscribe to the Handgun World Podcast, because it's really good stuff. And Bob and I have become friends over the years, and it's great. Bob came out, he'll tell the story, to Western Washington and did a couple classes that I was involved with, which was really, really fun to meet him and everything like that. So I wanted to do that. And then, so just say hello, Bob, and fill in all the little allusions I made to Walmart parking lots and things like that, because that gets people's imagination going.
Yeah, Glenn and Shelby, thanks so much for having me on the show. I appreciate that. And I'm glad you brought up, I'm glad you brought up the Walmart parking lot incident, because, wow, that's been a long time. That's been a long time. But that's what got me started.
Yeah, what happened?
What happened, well, it was about 13 years ago. And I'm a traveling salesperson. I have been for many, many years. And I was living in Dallas at the time, and I drove to Houston for some business. I got into Houston real late. It was pretty close to midnight, and I checked into my hotel room, and I forgot to pack socks, and I had no socks, and I had 3 business meetings the next day and just didn't feel like going to the business meetings without socks. So a suit and no socks doesn't look too great. So
not a good look.
I went to Walmart close to midnight, and I go in there, I find my socks, I pay for them, I'm walking out, so the time is probably about 10 minutes after midnight, and I'm walking out of the Walmart, and I get about 30 feet outside the front doors, and some guy approaches me, some guy that didn't look so good. It just didn't look good at all, and I could see by the look in his eyes, he wasn't just wanting to come up and say, "Hey, dude, how you doing? Good to see you." It was quite the opposite. So he came up to me and he says, "Hey, I need some directions." And I said, "Well, I don't think I can help you with that, sir." And I kept on walking. And I'm thinking, okay, he's going to be gone as soon as I keep on walking. Nope, he wasn't gone. He kept following me. And he got up close to me again. He kind of got, somewhat in my face. He says, "Hey, I need your help. I need some directions." And my instincts took over and said, "Keep walking." Now, remember, my first mistake I made, my vehicle was parked about 150 feet away from the door. probably not a good idea to park out there that late at night. So I have a long way to go yet before I get to my vehicle. I just keep on going. And he keeps following me. And another time, he got up to me and says, I need your help. I need some directions. I kept on going, and at that time, he grabs my left arm, and he spins me around. He pulled it with a pretty good amount of force. And he says, dude, I need your help. Then I realized, okay, it's game on. And he had his right hand in his pocket at that point. And he was grasping something in his pocket. And to this day, I'll never know what it was. I don't know if it was a pocket gun. I don't know if it was a knife. I don't know if it was a set of nunchucks or whatever, or, whatever. Brass knuckles, who knows? And so something said to me, run. And I just took off, and I started making a dash for my vehicle. A second and a half later, the Walmart security guard pulls up in his golf cart. And he said, hey, what's going on here? What's going on? He kind of broke it up. And, of course, the Walmart security guard was not armed. So when I thought about that later, I thought, what good was he? But actually, I guess he distracted this guy from me. And that was all the time I needed was to get to my vehicle and get in there and lock the door and start up and drive away. So that's the story. So when I got back to my hotel 10 minutes later, it was right then and there, I decided, this is Texas. I can easily get a concealed carry license, and I'm starting to carry from now on because I just had a close encounter that I don't know what that was all about.
Exactly. And that is and that's a lot like Shelby and in her books and everything, bad situations like this jolt people. And you're a regular guy up to this point, unarmed. Yep. You're going to Walmart to get socks for a business meeting, right? I mean, that's the most normal of normal you can possibly have. And then you get jolted into this. And I like that because you're a regular guy. And now, of course, and then you learned all kinds of shooting. You went to a lot of classes. Then you became a trainer, and then the podcast. So anything to add to that before we ask our first question of you?
Well, it was when the guy got physical, that's when I had to really take the situation seriously. And I just realized after that, this could happen to anybody at any time, and it could happen to me again. So next time, I'm going to be prepared for that. And had I been carrying, most likely at the time that he got physical, my hand probably would have been on the gun. Not drawn, probably would not have drawn my gun at that point because my life was not in imminent danger. But I think I probably would have been ready and felt better about the situation if I was armed.
There you go. It's a common story. Well, I think Shelby has a question for you.
All right. So I love these stories because this is exactly where I think a lot of people start wanting to become gun owners. So, and we're experiencing a lot of people wanting to become gun owners because they're seeing, and we'll talk about this later on maybe, people being let out of prisons and jails left and right because of coronavirus. We're seeing police not being able to respond to things, any sort of calls unless they are dire emergencies. We're seeing police forces being hit by coronavirus. So in other words, lawlessness is not you can't depend on government for that, which you shouldn't anyway. But anyway, so I am coming to this conversation. This is my first time talking to Bob as someone who became a first-time gun owner in 2012. So first question for you, and I've gone through all these questions, and it's bringing back all these memories from way back then. Bob, revolver versus semi. What's your thoughts?
For a first gun.
First handgun.
Oh, great question. I love that question. Both are good. I mean, right? I have to say that, right? I have to toe the line and say the right thing so that nobody gets upset, right? Let me point out. First of all, as Glenn mentioned, I'm not an industry expert, but revolver versus semi-auto. In my opinion, I guess if absolute simplicity is your thing, if you want to have a firearm where you don't have to even think about how to use it, then I guess a revolver is probably better for you. Because all you got to do is open the cylinder, drop in 5 or 6 rounds, close it, and the gun's ready to go. It's that simple. You don't have to worry about magazines. You don't have to worry about any of the stuff like that, how to load them, how to put them in your gun, how to rack the slide and put a chamber in the round like you do with any semi-automatic. So does that answer your question?
It does. And can I throw in? I want to throw in my opinion on that, and
Sure, go ahead.
And
Please
Glenn's jumping over there
I have
too.
more to say, too. Go ahead.
When I was making that decision, what made that decision for me was two things. I chose a semi. The first reason why I didn't choose the revolvers because I shot one and they hurt. It hurts because the pull that trigger is a first time you're sitting there pulling and pulling and pulling. Is this thing broken? And then you start looking at your hand and it can be unsafe. So we're going to talk about this later, but if you're going to buy a handgun, don't just practice, training. The second thing I liked about a semi is a revolver's fat. It's hard as a woman to conceal it. So a semi is a little bit flatter and you can conceal it in a lot more places. So those are my thoughts as a woman, and Glenn's going to throw his in.
Real quick, the one advantage, two advantages to a revolver, and Bob hit on the main one, which is simplicity, which is great. Mm-hmm. The other thing is if you live in a terrible state where you can't have, as a practical matter, semi-automatic pistols, or they're limited to 7 rounds or 9 rounds or something, I guess you can get a 1911. Anyway,
whatever.
Revolvers might be the way to go if you live in an unfree state. So, but what are the advantages then, Bob? And again, we're speaking to first-time gun owners and to experienced gun owners who are going to be speaking to first-time gun owners. What are some advantages, or what are some differences? Maybe is a better way to put it. I don't want to load the question. Differences with a semi-auto versus a revolver.
Well, having said what I said earlier, my immediate recommendation when somebody comes to me and says to me, what kind of a handgun should I get? I'm going to tell them, get a nice semi-automatic 9mm, one that is easy to shoot. I'm going to recommend that. And here's why. Advantages of the revolver we just touched on. Advantage of the semi-automatic, they're easier to shoot. Here's the problem with revolvers. A lot of brand new gun owners, they go to a gun store, they take the advice of the gun store salesman, and sometimes, and this is, I'm not trying to cut down gun store salesmen because they're doing a job, they're getting paid to do a job, God bless them. Some of them are doing the best they can, but some of them just don't know everything, and some of them are very good. So if you get a good one, that's terrific. Most of them, especially if they see a lady, they'll stick a small, tiny little revolver in her hand and say, this is what you should get.
It fits your hand.
Comes in pink.
It's pink.
I don't know if any of you listening to this have shot a little snub-nosed revolver.
It hurts.
But when you, especially when you put concealed carry ammo in those things, they are not fun to shoot. So somebody will buy it, and they'll go to the range, and they'll shoot their first 10 rounds and go, I hate this thing.
Yeah.
And I normally don't hear that when I recommend that somebody buys a 9mm semi-automatic because they're 99 times out of 100 easier to shoot and more fun to shoot. So that's why I recommend it.
Very good. And I only have a few seconds left before our break, so I'm going to take us out. I want to talk, if you've read my books, A Great State, I talk about this very thing. And I think you'd agree with me, Bob. For a woman, buying a handgun is like buying a pair of jeans. It will fit you differently than it fits the next person. And I've talked about this to women's groups. I've talked about this to prepping groups. Don't buy the female in your life a gun based upon the fact that it's cute and pink. And I even had somebody at a group say, I bought it for her because it was cute and pink and now she hates it. Take her to the store. Take her to the range, possibly rent some firearms, and we need to take a quick break. Don't go away. We have so much more to talk about on the other side.
We'll be right back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate right after this.
Prepping 2.0 is about that next level of prepping. One of the key 2.0 items to have is bulletproof body armor plates. I used to think body armor was too tactical for a regular guy like me, but it isn't. Give yourself, your family, and your team an unfair advantage when bullets are flying. Body armor used to be expensive and hard to get. Not anymore. KD Armor, and that stands for Come and Take It, makes solid and affordable body armor for normal people. Get body armor while you can. The clowns in Congress are trying to prohibit future sales. KD Armor is the place to get it. CATI-armor.com. Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount when you use the coupon code GRANT.
When the grid goes down, darkness will descend fast. Used to be there was nothing you could do about an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, or CME, coronal mass ejection. Now you can protect your electronics, protect your family, thanks to EMP Shield. EMP Shield invented a simple-to-install device that prevents whatever's connected to it from frying in an EMP or CME, and it costs just a few $100s. EMP Shield has been tested by independent laboratories and passed muster with the government, which has ordered lots of them. Google EMP Shield and see for yourself. And save some money. Get a $50 discount per device. Go to prepping2-0.com. Click on the Friends and Affiliates page, then click on the EMP Shield logo. At checkout, use coupon code PREPPING 2.0. It's all one word.
PrepperNet, where preppers unite. Looking to meet other like-minded people in your area? Looking to start your own prepper group? Already have a group? Join PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet has gathered the biggest names in the industry to help unite preppers everywhere. Join John Jacob Schmidt, Scott Hunt, Dr. Bones and Nurse Amy, Glenn Tate, Shelby Gallagher, Charlie Hogwood, Samuel Culper, Survivor Jane, Rick Austin, Franklin Horton, Ryan Mitchell, and Brian Duff. Our team is united. Check us out at PrepperNet.com. PrepperNet, where preppers unite. PrepperNet.com.
Shelby Gallagher here. We found that you need to layer your food preps.
Yeah, this is Glenn Tate here. A lot of times the hardest part of layering is the long-term foods. We love Numana foods, which have a 25-year shelf life and are non-GMO. Also, organic meals are available.
Numana comes in family-style portions and in bulk. This is not backpacking food. It's family meals that last for at least 25 years. The perfect freeze-dried part of your food layering.
You can get a sample of Numana meals for $19.95 and see for yourself. You will be amazed.
Prepping 2.0 listeners get a 10% discount by entering the code PREP.
Go to Numana.com or click the link on the Prepping 2.0 website.
Give it a try. Numana.com. That is Numanna.com.
And we're back with more of Prepping 2.0 with authors Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher.
Welcome back, everyone. Shelby Gallagher here with our guest today, Bob Mayne, and my co-host, Glenn Tate. And we're talking about good firearms to recommend to first-time firearm owners. And this is a near and dear to my heart topic. We've talked about this on previous shows. We have an expert with us. I have always said firearms fit women, probably men too, like jeans. One might fit Glenn here different than it fits me, different than it fits your daughter or wife or whoever. And I was just talking about that. So, Bob, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, before the break, you said something very important. And you said, don't go buy a woman a gun because it looks cute and pretty and has pink grips and everything like that. One of the biggest mistakes, and I'm going to kind of pick on guys here for a minute because a lot of them do this. One of the biggest mistakes is when their wife or significant other says, I want a gun, they go run down to the gun store and they buy her the smallest little gun with pink grips, bring it home and say, here you go, sweetie, here's your gun. And I think that's a huge, huge mistake to do because for several reasons. As soon as she goes to the range and shoots it and hates it, she's going to blame you for it because you bought it, right?
We're really trying to mitigate that issue, yes.
Right. So now you're the bad guy, okay, because you bought this thing that she hates. The second thing is most of those cute little guns that they don't tell you is they're difficult guns to shoot. Small little tiny guns have what we call a very short sight radius, which means they got a very, for new gun owners, that means the barrel's short and the slide is short. And it's harder to shoot that accurately. Plus, they kick and recoil a lot more than most of larger guns do. Some people think it's the opposite. Some people think, a small gun, it's not going to kick much. Usually it's the opposite, especially when you're going to put concealed carry ammo in there.
Very good.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
What are your thoughts on brands? I have a feeling I have a pretty good idea. Tell us what your thoughts are on brands for new firearm owners, for new concealed carry owners.
I got to be careful. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'll just go ahead and say, I would always recommend to a new gun owner to buy a simplistic 9mm semi-automatic. And there's a few brands that immediately come to mind. Obviously, one of them is Glock. Glocks are very simple. They're very reliable. They're very rugged. The great thing about a new gun owner picking up a Glock, or even a Smith & Wesson M&P, or even something like the Ruger 9mm semi-automatics, if something goes wrong with that, it's easy to find people who can work on a Glock. It's easy to find spare parts for a Glock. If you want to buy some extra magazines, it's easy to find magazines for a Glock or a Smith & Wesson M&P. If you buy something that is not as popular, and think about law enforcement, your local law enforcement's probably got a Glock or a Smith & Wesson M&P on their hip. I think those two brands are probably covered by carried by most cops. That means the stores are going to have parts and accessories and ammo for those guns too to serve the cops. Make sense?
Yep. Yes, it does.
So that's why I would recommend those. I'd recommend those.
Yeah, and I may add to this, and I'm a big Glock fan. Obviously, there are no awful handguns out there. There are none that are going to explode in your hand. I mean, there are none that are just terrible. And so keep that in mind. This is really Ford, Chevy kind of stuff at this point. But I will say this about Glocks. They've recently come out with single stack magazine pistols. There's the 42 and the 43 and the 43X and the 48. And that is a big game changer because they're a lot thinner and they're great for concealed carry. I personally have a Glock 43X with some Shield Arms 15-round magazines instead of the stock 10-round magazines, and they're amazing, those Shield Arms magazines. And so for whatever it's worth, it's what I carry. I have relatively small hands. I have medium-sized hands, and it works just great. And there you go. And there's tons of accessories. There's grip wraps, Talon grips to make them,
and he has them all. He has them all. Yeah. And I'm going to throw this out there just as the outlier in the room. When I first bought my first firearm back in 2012, it was a Sig Sauer SIG P238, which means it shoots 380 ammo. The reason why I got it is, as a new firearm owner, I wanted this safety. And those are basically training wheels. It has the thumb safety on it. I graduated to a 938, which is a very, very, very slightly different. It's almost like the P238, but in a 9mm. Graduated to that with the thumb safety because I wanted my training wheels. And now that I've shot a whole lot of Glocks with Glenn, they feel very much the same. There's just not the thumb safety in my mind. That's what the difference is. I want to ask your thoughts on the thumb safeties with all of that. It's training wheels. I don't know how else to say it. If you're a first-time gun owner, if you feel like you need those, consider that. I really like the SIG. What I hate, I will say this, is that their magazines are a small fortune compared to the Glocks, right?
They are.
And but I'm just throwing it out there as an option. The Rugers, I talk about those in my books because I really, when I've shot those are really enjoyable to shoot. And I will throw this out there, and I want to see what your thoughts are. Go to a gun range where you can rent a firearm so that you can do that very thing. You can try. That's how I figured out it. I like the 238. Go and rent them for like $15-20. You can rent a firearm for an hour and try it out with an instructor nearby to tell you how to operate the thing. What are your thoughts on all of those things I just talked about, Bob?
I'm glad you led me into that because I did a show. I did a podcast on my show. I think it was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, but you can go back to handgunworld.com and find it and stream it and listen to it. Or you might even be able to pick it up on Apple iTunes and Apple Podcasts where you find my show. The episode was all about how to get your first gun. And the first thing I started talking about was go to a range and rent first. And I think that's the best thing you can do. Even if you have to drop $15 every time you rent a gun, and let's say you rent 5 guns, that's $75 very well spent, because that $75 could prevent you from making a huge mistake and buying something you don't like that you have to try to resell later and get something different. So it's a great idea, and ranges will be happy to rent you the guns because they also know they want you to buy a gun in their store. So if you're in there and renting and shooting, you're likely to buy something while you're there.
Yeah, and if you've rented it and you like it and it's going to work for you, they know they're going to see more of you because you're going to be shooting there.
Exactly.
And all of that stuff. What are your thoughts on thumb safety versus no thumb safety?
Okay, I'll get into that. I just want to throw out one more gun out there that's really, really good.
Oh, good, yeah.
I've taken a very big liking to it lately, and that's the new Sig Sauer P365.
Yeah.
I'm carrying one right now. It's a 9mm. It's a little on the pricey side, but worth every dollar. It's small. It holds 10 rounds in the magazine, and it's so simple to use and easy to shoot. So your question, thumb safety.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of them. I understand the thinking that for a new person, it's comforting.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the challenge: when you practice with your gun and you start to train with it, I hope you do. I mean, you at least need to take a gun safety class if you're a brand new owner. At least go get a gun safety class. I had a very difficult time. I've been shooting for 16 years now. I've had a tough time with any gun with a thumb safety. I've had a tough time disengaging that safety fast enough for my liking. Most of the time, if you have to use your gun, you got to use it right now, and it's probably going to be in less than a second and a half. And you got to make the decision to get that gun either out of your safe or out of your holster and shoot now, because the guy's about to kill you. And I have been in competition matches more than once, and I've seen experienced shooters draw that gun out of their holster and forget to depress the thumb safety. And they start pressing on that trigger and nothing's happening. And the first time I saw that, I thought, wow, what if it happens to me in real life? What if I got a gun with a thumb safety and the moment of truth arrives, somebody wants to kill me to take all the toilet paper that I stashed during the coronavirus epidemic. And I got to take care of the situation right now, and I failed to disengage that thumb safety. And I've heard people say, oh, Bob, that's not going to happen. I have seen it happen with many shooters at the range.
Agree.
That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, agree 100%. I've been in the exact same boat. You shoot more than I do. I mean, you were mentioning competition. So if it's happened, or if you've seen it, it's more prevalent than what I've seen. And I've also seen it. Another thing to keep in mind, and again, this is kind of focused at your first-time handgun buyer. Just because a Glock, for example, and I'm not trying to, I'm not a Glock fanboy, but I'm just talking about Glocks. They don't have an external thumb safety, but they do have a safety, and it's on the trigger. And so you have to be pulling the trigger for the thing to shoot. It's called the trigger safety, which sounds like an oxymoron, but it isn't. And you can't, they don't just go off on their own. My point being that it's not as if a thumb safety is the only kind of safety. And to illustrate this, we were up at Joe Tantori's range where, Bob, you've gone and trained twice, which is an amazing place. Since been closed down, which is too bad. But anyway, that was an amazing time up there. But I took out a Glock one time. I was talking to this, I'll be honest, kind of older gentleman who was a big fan of 1911s and all this. And okay, that's cool. And he said something like, and I was surprised because he's an experienced shooter. He said, yeah, well, those Glocks, if you drop them, they go off. And I said, really? And I pulled the Glock out of my holster and I threw it downrange, and it landed, in the grass. And it didn't go off. Not only did it not go off, I then, recovered it and didn't even wipe anything off and shot a full magazine out of it, and everything worked fine. So they don't go off on their own. I would say this when it comes to an external safety: if that's what it takes to get somebody to buy a gun, if they say, I just have to have a thumb safety, it's better than no gun. And I'm not trying to be facetious. I mean, it is better than no gun. And just keep it in mind, another thing about safeties that I find a reason not to have a gun with safeties, since I shoot Glocks all the time, I have a particular handhold, a particular way of holding it. When I try to duplicate that out of habit and muscle memory on another gun with a safety,
like a SIG.
Yeah, exactly.
At the range with me.
when the slide doesn't fly off, based on a true story, with a SIG, that I end up either activating the safety or deactivating the safety when I don't mean to, just because I'm not used to shooting a gun with a safety. And so there's that.
And let me jump in there on the slide flying off. SIG went through a really bad time about 2 or 3 years ago with their 938s in particular, where this literally, you'd be shooting, it happened to me, and the slide, as I'm shooting it, the slide comes off. That's it. That's dangerous. And I called the company, and I had 2 of them at the time. I sold one since then. Said, this is not, I'm ready to sell them back to you. You guys need to make this right. They immediately, I sent them back. They fixed them and sent them back to me. So I want to say that SIG is made right. You don't hear those complaints anymore.
That's true. And I'll say this, and Bob and I talked about it on episode 500 of part whatever it was of his show, because he did several episode 500s. One point that
Part
you,
A.
yeah, that's right. Gun manufacturers now, and I cannot think of any that are not like this. All gun manufacturers have amazing customer service.
You can't
take
make
it
bad
back.
guns these days. You can't.
You mail it back,
No, you can't.
and they mail it back to you fixed. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it doesn't. But that is a huge deal.
Yeah,
especially
they
for
made good on that. So I want to say that about Tig. I will say
It is a
that,
huge deal.
and I will say this too. As someone who's taken off the training wheels, when I carry, here's a nice thing about thumb safeties, and as you can tell for listeners, there's a pro and a con to this. I carry with the safety off, so I can just pull and shoot. So that's the option. When you get to that point where you're ready to take the training wheels off, you don't have to go back out and buy another firearm. Just make sure when you holster it and go about your day, safety's off, so you can pull and shoot and go.
In a similar vein, Bob, on the safety thing, some people, I know what your opinion is. I'm just going to give you a softball here. What about people who carry a semi-automatic pistol and they don't rack around into the chamber?
Why?
Okay, let's talk about that. Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for teeing up that softball for me. I'm gonna try to hit this a long way. By the way, episode 208 was my episode on buying your first handgun, so people can look that up. Handgunworld.com, episode 208. Okay. Not carrying around. This idea came. It for some reason it came about because the Israeli military, a long time ago, they don't do this anymore. The Israeli military used to do that. And I'm not going to get into the reason why they did that. It's an hour-long discussion. So ordinary people started thinking, well, I guess I can be like an Israeli military. I'm just as good, right? So I'll just, I don't feel good about carrying around the chamber. I'll just draw my pistol and I'll rack around into the chamber when it's time. Well, I've taught a lot of classes. And in fact, I've taught a lot of first-time gun owners in some of the classes I used to teach. We literally had people that came to the class and say, I just bought this gun last week. And God bless them, they showed up at a class. It takes a new gun owner, probably on the average, until they get their skills sharpened up, it probably takes them 3 or 4 seconds, at least, to draw the gun out of their holster and put the first round on target.
Yep.
Now, if they have to rack a round into the chamber before they do that, that's probably going to take another second. You just keep adding, the more you keep adding time that it takes you to put your first round on the bad guy, I think the more chance you have to lose that fight.
Yeah, and one of the things I hate about Hollywood, which is a whole different discussion we won't get into right now, is that in so many movies, because it gives them a chance to put a sound effect in, when the slide's racked, and show after show, they will, it's like FBI agents, raiding a house, and they rack a chamber, but I mean it's dumb. It's not real. We're gonna move it along here because the regular. What's that, Shelby?
I have to just say, at the end of Silence of the Lambs, when she pulls back her trigger on a revolver and the reason why she won that gunfight is because she basically had her slide racked, but it was on a revolver. That was the best one. All the others are awful, but that's where it's like, know your firearms and know what you're doing because the good guy won on that one. Am I right, Bob? Right?
Yes.
Good answer,
know what
Bob.
you're doing. And like Glenn said, please ignore what you see on Hollywood.
Yes.
Just ignore it. It's not realistic.
Nope. Exactly. All right. So the next one we want to talk about, we have a long list of things to talk about. We're going to see how much we get through. Sub, compact, or full size.
Could I back you up a moment? What about caliber?
Ooh, caliber's even better. Yes.
What are your thoughts on
calibers? My thoughts on caliber right now today, 9mm. And the reason I say 9mm, or if you buy a revolver 38 special, or buy a revolver that will shoot 357s and load them up with 38 specials when you're getting started because they're easier to shoot. Those are the most common calibers. I mean, if you look around, the world has basically switched to 9mm. Law enforcement agencies have switched to it. Military units have switched to it. The ammo, even though we have a crisis in buying ammo today, it's still some of the least expensive ammo you can purchase. So it means you can shoot more, it means you can get more practice, it means you can stock more ammo for your guns. Stick with 9mm, I think, in semi-automatics and 357 38 special in revolvers.
Exactly. And one of the things that has happened, and we talk about this show being Prepping 2.0, and the reason we picked that name, it was very deliberate. There have been so many advances in things. There's like a whole new prepping world. There are new products, prices have come down, everything else. But here's a great example of this. Defensive ammunition has come so doggone far in the past few years that 9mm, a good 9mm defensive load, and everybody has their favorite, but 9mm defensive load is roughly the same, hitting power as a .40 caliber, which is very snappy and has hard recoil and is kind of hard to find, the ammunition. In other words, 9mm with good defensive ammunition is going to do what you need it to do, and it's all you need to think about.
Well, and let me add
you can carry more ammo.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I'm going to add to this, again, the reason why Shelby Gallagher here went to a SIG 938, which is 9mm, for exactly what you just said, stopping power. 9mm is better stopping power. I always know if I'm carrying my 238, which is 380 ammo, if I have to use it, I'm going to empty the mag. That's it, because the stopping power of a 380 is so much less. I have a whole scene in my book about if you're going to, some guy, it happened to me in real life, comes up to me, if you're going to carry a gun, carry a gun. Don't carry a wussy, 380. You know what? Don't say that to women. Don't say that to a woman who's just starting her world of carrying a firearm. If she's carrying a 380, better carry the 380.
Congratulate her.
Exactly. And encourage her to keep practicing with it and get her to the point where she's, all right, I'm ready to go to a 9mm. And I will say this, ladies, things have changed so much since even 2012 when I started this. You can find a 9mm that is, the 938 in the SIG is millimeters slightly larger than the 380. The entire gun manufacturing world is geared toward, and you just hit it right, towards making the 9mm easy and comfortable. When I first started firing firearms in 2011 and 12, 9mm were kind of big and bulky and hard to shoot. That's why I chose the 380. That is not like that anymore. So much has changed. I totally recommend. Totally recommend a 9mm.
In fact, if you want a small gun, there's some easy shooting small 9mm. Smith & Wesson Shield makes a nice easy shooting small 9mm. The SIG P365 is easy to shoot. The small Glocks are easy to shoot. And generally, you can carry more rounds of 9mm than you can a 45 ACP, for example.
Yes.
Exactly. And when I was on your show, Bob, we talked about this. This is the golden age of guns. And it applies to pistols. It applies to ammunition. It applies to rifles. This is the golden age. Take advantage of it. Well, we're going to go through some more questions here. I can tell we're going to take, as usual, this great conversation into the after show. I'll give folks an idea, and we have about 5 minutes in this segment. I'm going to give folks an idea of where we're going and the topics we're going to cover, so they can hopefully listen in the after show. And that is, we're going to cover subcompact versus full size. We're going to talk about the rest of the system for carrying a pistol, which would be a holster, a real gun belt, and mag holders. We're going to talk about the necessity of training. We're going to talk about maybe how to find ammo, and then talk about vehicle carry. So as you guys can see, there's a whole system to this. A gun in a box.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, a gun in a box.
In 4 minutes, let's go.
Yeah, no, there's no way we'll cover it. Is a gun in a box is just part one of your system, because there's all this other stuff that comes with it in order to do it right. So what are your thoughts, Bob, on subcompact and then what I'll call compact, which is really like medium size, and then full size pistols? What do you think about that, especially for new time?
Well, since we only have a few minutes left, to everybody who just bought a gun, congratulations. I'm proud of you. I'm glad you joined the club. You're a prepper. If you just bought a gun, if you were not a prepper before, you're a prepper now. Because when you buy a gun and choose to carry it, you have a prepper mindset. So congratulations. Welcome to this great club of gun owners. As far as size of the gun, there are some really good subcompact guns that shoot well and are very accurate. I named a few of them a couple minutes ago. I'm not sponsored by any of these, by the way. I own them. Smith & Wesson Shields are great. Small Glocks are great. Small Sig Sauer guns are great. Little Rugers, they shoot great, and they're easy to shoot, really. If you want to get a mid-size Glock 19, Smith & Wesson M&P compacts, those are highly recommended. A little tougher to conceal than the small guns. Shelby's 938, those are good guns. So, there's a lot of selections out there, but a lot of people seem to be favoring the small, tiny single stacks these days because they're just easy to carry.
Yeah, and I don't see anybody in real life basically carrying full size, say a Glock 17 or something. It can be done. It's easier in the winter. Yes. I see it as guys, and it's almost always guys. In fact, it's always guys. It's been in my experience who like to tell you that they have a Glock, full-size Glock in 10 millimeter, and you go, okay, that's cool. Cool story, bro. And, that's not really much of a thing. Obviously, if you can open carry or if you're on patrol and that kind of stuff, that's a thing. Talk about holsters, belts, and mag holders. And before you do, I have a great friend of mine and a friend of the show, Tim at Northwest Retention Systems, who makes custom Kydex holsters. Super good guy. So anyway.
And you can find him on our Friends and Affiliates page on our website.
That's right. So, Bob, what are your thoughts on holsters, belts, and mag holders?
Well, in full disclosure, I'm sponsored by Concealment Solutions at concealmentsolutions.com. You can find them on my page. When you say holsters and belts and things, I want to say something that most people probably don't say. I think the most important part of that is your belt.
Yep.
A lot of people just try to use the JCPenney leather dress belt that they bought at JCPenney's and think, I can just, stick my holster inside my waistband. That belt's not going to work. I'm sorry. It's not. You're going to have to, get $50 or $60 or $70 out of your pocket and get a good gun belt. And there are a lot of gun belts that look like dress belts these days. There's a lot of them. They look nice. If you care about looks, although I've always wondered, why do people care about how their belt looks? Because usually it's concealed. But
exactly.
Anyway,
Bob, we're going to have to, it always happens. It's the end of the regular show. We're going to take this discussion and Patreon predictions and Bob's predictions for 2020. It's going to be good.
Ooh, that's going to be fun.
Into the after show. Shelby, take us out with your famous phrase.
Folks, from Benjamin Franklin, failing to prepare is preparing to fail. Have a good week, everyone. Happy collapse, right?
You've been listening to Prepping 2.0 with authors Shelby Gallagher and Glenn Tate. All of the fun and easy prepping information heard on this podcast can be found online at prepping2-0.com. You can also find out more about Glenn's books online at 299days.com and about Shelby's books online at agreatstate.com. Until next time, be smart, be safe, and be prepared.